Hey everybody, today I want to talk about solar eclipse. And I know on my channel most of the time I'm talking about cars and I mix some boats and other technical stuff in, but this one's kind of fun. This is another, I may have worked on cars and be an engineer, mechanical engineer and so forth, but I have a lot of varied interests, and I'll say, while I'm not an astronomer by any means, I have tinkered around with a telescope, and I do view the moon and planets a little bit, and solar eclipses have always fascinated me, but they've always been way too far away to do anything about. It's just been it's been difficult. The idea that we had two of them going across the middle part of the United States here within a period of just a few years. I went to the 2017 one. I learned a bunch, and now I'm starting to plan for April of 2024 to see the next one. And first, let me show you something here.
Wow, what? Oh my god, it looks insane. Don't look at the ring. That is so... Wow. That's cool. Oh, it's like... That dog is like, what's happening? Wow. Whoa. But I've never seen it where, like, it's like sunset, but like sunset on all sides.
I think you're allowed to look at it now, right?
I would. Yes, you can look now.
Yeah, that's a good sign.
Oh my gosh.
What?
Oh. Yeah, because if you look with the glasses, you can't see anything.
Look at it. It's like the
We
red.
can't stare at it. No, I think you'll get it.
That is eerie.
Now I'm going to run it a second time and give you some commentary. What I did was handed my camera, this is just my regular video camera, and I handed it to my wife and said, yeah, here, just take some stuff, you know, pan it around and see what you can get. So she did. And what you'll notice is that the camera doesn't do a great job of focusing on the sun. You can see it's trying really hard to get a picture of the eclipse itself, but it's just such a different experience where it's dark, the sun comes, the stars come out, the car's sitting there, it turned its headlights on because it got dark and it was sitting there idling, and you can see around the perimeter that it's still light around you. You know, it's not dark everywhere, it's dark where you are. But we were near Nashville, Tennessee, and we were up in the hills to the north of Nashville, and you could look down toward the city, and you could see that light on the other side of the shadow, especially as the eclipse started to come to an end. You could see the brightness starting to approach, and you can see me there rapidly taking some pictures, which I did. And then, now this is a second part of the clip where we didn't film all the way through. Filmed a little bit at the beginning and a little bit at the end. But it's really a tremendous experience. And being that you don't get many chances, I really went at it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, I took a bunch of pictures. I'm going to show you some of those and explain. And I'm going to show you some of my equipment, and we'll walk through it. So the eclipse, I mean, it's the shadow of the moon on the earth, and the planets, you know, the moon has to line up between the sun and the earth in just the right place to get it. And I know I've seen partial eclipses before. In my lifetime there have been totals, you know, in distant parts of the country from me. But living in the middle part of the country, Michigan, Wisconsin, Indiana, you know, we had partials, but we never had a total that I could go to. Until this one in August 2017, And so we caught it down here, just about 10 or 20 miles north of Nashville. Well, this time it's coming through the other way, and the amazing thing is, how far across the country these eclipses go. And so today it actually crosses over, and is going to head out, and it's going to come real close to Michigan. Now, my choice, I made a choice to come down for various reasons, including some family reasons, to head down more toward Indiana. And a couple of things. One is connections with my family. The second one is, being that it's springtime, I thought perhaps being a little further away from the Great Lakes would be a good thing, because we tend to get, in Michigan especially, we get a lot of cloud cover and rain and so forth off of the lakes. And you certainly don't want clouds to spoil it. In 2017, in the one I went to, the people down in Nashville, there were people like in a stadium down there, and we heard by word of mouth that they actually got a fair amount of cloud cover, and they saw most of it, but they didn't see the whole eclipse because they had clouds formed down there in the valley. So just as you're picking a place to watch, so anywhere along here is a good thing. And here's another map I found showing the path of the total eclipse coming across, and it very nearly gets to Detroit, Toledo. So I'm up in here because it's a reasonable place to go. When I went, I was working on hybrid cars at the time, and so this was my 2018 Buick LaCrosse that was outfitted with a hybrid. Hey, it made a great road car for going down. You can see my telescope rig here in the back, and I had a tripod for my camera back there. And here I am it was a hot day. It was, probably 90-ish, maybe beyond 90. So it was a little bit of a challenge to stay cool. I'm not an expert, so I'm really not going to provide advice. I'm going to tell you what I did and let you have some ideas how you might want to approach it. But I'm not an expert in the field. This is just, hey, I went to see it. I'm going to go look at the next one. These are the kinds of things I have in mind. And the main thing that the experts tell you is, don't look at the sun without certified, approved safety filters. You'll destroy your eyes, and it doesn't take long. The sun is really powerful. You got powerful ultraviolet. You really got to watch it. You got to make sure that you have good filters that don't have any defects, pinholes or anything in them, that again would let stuff through. So I treat my filters very carefully. So go to authoritative type sources. One that I used as a reference is this eclipse.aas.org, and they seem to be partnered up with NASA and the government agencies trying to put out good information. So it seemed like a good place. There are probably a number of others. Purchase your filters from somebody you trust. There are a lot of places that sell solar filters, and they may even have labels that say they're good. How do you know, right? And again, it's your eyes you're talking about. And then, even if you got a camera or telescope, you need to have the right filter, because if you try to, just the sun, even if you had a camera on the back, right? Just the sun going into your telescope or your camera, you're going to fry it just from the heat of the sun. So you got to have the safety filters on. So in 2017, what did I do? Well, I bought certified. I didn't know what to do, right? So being the engineer kind of guy I am, I went full route. I have a pair of binoculars, 7x50s that I use for out on the boat. You can purchase filters. So these are from Orion, the telescope people, that popped over the ends of my lenses, and I could hold that up, put my eyes to them, and we could use those to view the eclipse through the telescope or through the binoculars, magnified. My telescope, of course, needed its own filter, and it's still in the protected bag. Looks like that. Pops on the end of my tube here, and again is very protective. Now I'll say the problem I had, or the challenge I had with my telescope, is that it has a motor drive. It'll track. And I had tested everything, but when I showed up to do it, my hand control was malfunctioning. I couldn't read the display. It wasn't working right. It would still power the telescope, and I could push right and left, up and down, and so the sun would be out there, and the sun would kind of track and keep moving, and every 5 minutes or so I'd have to bump the buttons to bring it back into alignment and keep it centered. But that kind of messed up. I was going to put my DSLR on this camera, on this adapter that would attach to the telescope so that I could take pictures through the telescope with the camera. That really didn't work because the telescope wasn't tracking. So then my SLR. Now you say, hey, what's that funny piece of cardboard? Well, I have to admit, I didn't take a piece of cardboard with me. I actually found one in the trunk of my car. The first thing that I realized when I arrived was that, let me take it off now. You've got a camera, right? And you're going to point it at the sun, and it has an approved safety filter screwed on the end of it on the lens. But you're looking at the sun through this camera, and you've got I didn't want to use the viewfinder. Again, that's riskier. But the camera has a screen on the back. Well, you're trying to look up at the sun and look at the screen, and it's really bright and very uncomfortable. And I found, as soon as I got there, there were some people down the way, and they had cardboard shields with holes in them, and they had actually taken the time to cover their cardboard with aluminum foil. So it had a wrapping, reflective wrapping. So I didn't have aluminum foil, but I quick ran and I found a spare piece of cardboard, cut one of those out, and then that makes a really nice shield for your face as you're trying to do things from the back of the camera. Made a big difference. Again, not knowing everything I would need, we bought some of these. We bought a box of these little cardboard solar eclipse glasses. So anybody who was in our party could, throw a pair of these on and look and be safe. And they look like they've all got about the same solar film in them. And these came from Meade Instruments. So, and hey, I'm not plugging these because I have any money in their business. This is just who I bought from because it was good at the time. I also, I do some arc welding from time to time, and I had an arc welding helmet. And generally with eclipses, they go, "Hey, you can use an arc welding helmet." Well, again, I checked some of these sources, and they said, "Hey, check your filter because a lot of arc welding helmets don't have a strong enough filter, a dark enough filter for solar eclipse, for solar viewing." And so they told me, one of these sites said that I needed a number 14, and this actually Sears Craftsman came with a number 12 in it. And a number 12, even though it's good for welding, isn't good enough for looking at the sun. So actually the number 12's in the bag, the number 14's in here. But this was another one. You could put that on and look at the sun real easy and watch the eclipse. Most of the time you're working in the partial eclipse phase, and so the sun is pretty doggone bright, and you got to stay with it. Now, one more thing I'll say is taping over. You don't want to accidentally look like through the viewfinder, the rangefinder for the telescope, and even those can get kind of hot if they're pointing at the sun. So I just took blue tape and taped blue tape over the ends of those. But if you have anything where you've got an unshielded viewfinder, rangefinder, you want to make sure those things are protected. I understand from reading now, with cell phones, that they even have some of these kinds of filters to go over the camera on your cell phone. I haven't seen them yet, but I've heard they exist. So the things I used, I had my Nikon. This is what they call a DX size sensor, and I have a 70-300 lens. Nikon's manufactured. And when the telescope went bad, it was like, well, I'm glad I had bought a filter for the camera. And so you put the filter on the camera and you can shoot with that. And I'm going to show you some pictures here in a minute of what I took. I had my Celestron reflector telescope, I had my arc welding mask, my binoculars. And the last one, you don't have to obsess about this too much, but something I learned at the very last minute was, if you're on the edge of the shadow, when they've got the maps and they go, hey, your totality goes like this, if you're over here on the edge, the time that you'll be in total will be very short. And the closer you are to the center, the longer the time will be. Now, you don't have to be right in the middle, but if you go on the web and you look at some of the sites, there are different people have posted simulators, and they've predicted, for a city, how many minutes of totality you'll have based on where you are in the width of the shadow. Like I say, you don't have to be in the middle, but you probably don't want to be right on the edge. If you're 2/3 of the way out, it's still not bad. I'm looking right now as if you're on the center of this one, you're somewhere, give or take, 4 minutes. If you're over toward the edge a little further, you may be 3 minutes. So you'll lose a little bit of time. If you're on the edge, it falls off pretty fast. So, well, if you can be in the middle, it's best, but you don't have to be. The biggest challenge with photography is, now this was taken through my camera with the 300mm lens, and you can kind of see there's a little bit of a haze around the image. These lenses, what I found was, you get some internal reflections in the lenses, and you get lens flare because it's so bright, even with the filters on. And you can see down in the lower left, it was a f5.6 and a 1/1600th of a second. And I was at exposure -2. What I tended to do was set an aperture, set an ISO setting, and then let the camera calculate the exposure and try to take a picture. And then I can adjust so many f-stops, plus minus. You can go like plus minus 3. In general, within 3, one way or the other, I could get some decent shots. So here's one where same settings, same time almost, little more light, but it was at a 400th of a second. The exposure was normal, and I got a lot of lens flare. So one of the things I need to learn to work with is, and I'm going to do some more testing before the next one is, on a bright sunny day, I can take this on a bright sunny day, put the filters on it, or the camera, and go out and test, and see what settings I need in the sun, and then I'll probably go out and do some at night, and test the settings at night for when you have the total part. The real challenge is that as you're going through the eclipse, you can't just get an exposure and keep it, because the amount of light on your lens is always going down. As you get down here, you get to a sliver of it, and at the sliver, a 400th of a second on a sliver was pretty good. Oh, and there's my exposure was a -6. Okay, so I can dial it down that far. Here's totality with the corona at a 2,000th of a second. Here's that same picture blown up. And I really like this one because you can see over on the edges, you can see the solar activity coming out, solar flares or prominences coming out around the outside of the shell. There's a kind of a more normal one at normal size with just the corona, a couple different exposures of it. And then here's coming out of the eclipse, out of the totality. And again, you can, depending on the exposure, you get more or less of the lens flare. And so, you know, I probably need to learn, I need to test a little bit more and figure out, you know, in some cases maybe I need to stop the lens down, go to f8, if 10, 11. Not sure yet, but I learned that I need to do some more work, and now that it's coming to the next one, I'm going to. So, you know, I kind of learned was, at the last eclipse, I was working. I mean, I had a full-time job. I was working 12-hour days, 6 days plus a week, and working projects. And I didn't have a lot of time. So I went out probably 3 or 4 weeks before the eclipse and ordered all these filters. And when they showed up, I did some basic testing. Went out in the backyard different times and did a few things. But I wasn't fully prepared. Honest, just wasn't. I also didn't use RAW files. I was using, this camera will, you know, Nikon, it'll shoot in JPEGs or RAW. RAW is a lot bigger file size, but it's not compressed, and so you can manipulate it more, do more with it after the fact. Whereas the JPEGs generally, they're compressed, and the compressed information is gone forever. If you edit, you don't get as good a job in editing. Biggest challenge is figuring out how to meter in full sun to 99.9% of totality with these filters on. And then, kind of at the end, at totality, you take these filters off. When you're really sure it's total, there's a feature that I read about that's called diamond ring, which is when the moon is coming across the sun and it gets down to the last little dot of sunlight, and the rest is corona, it looks sort of like a diamond ring. It's got a ring with a bright spot. Well, that bright spot will still burn your eyes out, and you'll still see it even through your filters. But once that's gone and all you see is corona, you can look through your filters, you won't see anything anymore because it's become night. And so then at that point, we popped our filters off and we looked at it, and I took pictures with the camera without the filter, and I kind of had a routine. I mean, I sort of figured I was going to go through a sequence of exposure levels. And so I took, you know, I set the aperture ISO, got it set, and changed the exposure from low to high. You know, went through a range, kind of did it like a bracket, changed a couple more settings, shot through. And if you're into these cameras, you'll understand what I'm talking about. I didn't use the automatic bracketing feature. It might have been a good idea, but I didn't. I manually bracketed through, you know, from plus f-stops to minus f-stops, made a new setting, and went back through those same settings again. It's really nice to have an adjustable camera, and with everything set up, I mean, I could click through them real fast. And the thing you got to remember, and I'm going to say biggest thing to learn, is I kind of suspected this, so I was planning, but I'll tell you, totality sneaks up on you. I thought, you know, it's like 10 minutes to totality, 5 minutes, it's coming, I know it's going to be here any minute, and in those last minutes, I'm scrambling like mad to make sure I got everything ready. And when it actually gets total, it's awesome. It's just awesome, I tell you. Really enjoyable experience. And you want to be able to set the camera down and take it in. And so what I did was, I knew I had, at the last one, I think I had 3.5 minutes. I said, I'm going to take this camera, it was on a tripod, I'm going to take a bunch of shots in a minute or less. My target, I kind of had a watch on it, And it was like I'm going to spend a minute or so and max, and then the camera stops. If I don't have it in a minute, tough luck. And then I'm just going to look and take it in. You know, it's really, I've always seen eclipses as really an awesome thing. Solar eclipses as an awesome thing. I mean, you think about what it takes that the size of the moon is precisely the size to block out the diameter of the sun and project what, 20 or 30 mile shadow on something the size of the Earth. That's just a random occurrence. It's like, you know, God planned it. You can have your opinions about that, but the statistics of having the moon lined up so closely that you see this event, celestial event, is just really quite amazing. So I'm a little concerned about April being, you know, whether we get clouds and whether weather is good. I mean, in early April, in Midwest, you can still get snowstorms. You know, I don't know what we're going to see. But at this point, I'm planning. I'm going to get my filters together. I'm going to test them and make sure they don't have any pinholes. I have a new hand control coming for the, I found one on eBay. I got a hand control coming to try to get the tracking working correctly in here. But they're all secondary to just watching and taking it in. If you go back and look at, you know, the videos I showed at the beginning, you know, it's just everybody, it's amazing because everything goes from daylight to dark within a minute or so as the sun disappears. And then you've got this 3 minutes where it's nighttime. The stars are out, the crickets are chirping, all of the nighttime insects are coming out because they think it's nighttime. And then as quick as it's there, you can see again in the video at the end, you know, the last few seconds is you're going from dark to all of a sudden the sun's back again. It's really cool. And I say, I'm just sharing my experience and I'm going to go back at it. If you want to do it, you know, go look up authoritative sources. Don't depend on me. I'll tell you what I learned, but you know, go find the smart people and get the good data. And you may choose to do it a different way than I did. But hey, that's all for now.